Good morning everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I will present my active listening skills assignment. My name is Perdana Parlinto Aritonang, class 33207, NIM 332500107. So before that, let us give thanks to God first, and let's begin. Part 1. Answer the question correctly. Number 1. What does SETI stand for according to Professor Hilary Twain? My answer is it stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And number 2. Why does Professor Hilary say that many people misunderstand the purpose of SETI? My answer is because people often think our job involves looking for UFOs or flying saucers in the sky or backyards, which is not what SETI does. Number 3, does Professor Hilary personally believe in UFOs? Explain her opinion. Answer is no, she does not. She believes that intelligent life exists somewhere in the universe, but she does not believe they are flying around Earth in silver discs. Number 4. What do SETI scientists actually believe about intelligent life? And my answer is they believe that intelligent civilizations exist somewhere in our solar system or in other galaxies. Number 5. Why does Mike feel surprised by Hilary's opinion about UFOs? And my answer is he assumed that believing in UFOs was a requirement or a central part of her job as a SETI researcher. Number 6. Explain the difference between believing in intelligent extraterrestrial life and believing in UFOs visiting Earth. My answer is believing in intelligent life means accepting that advanced civilization exists somewhere in the vast universe. Believing in UFOs visiting Earth means believing those civilizations have already traveled here and are physically present in our atmosphere. Number 7. How did Professor John Turgan explain the difficulty of searching for extraterrestrial life? The answer is he used the analogy of a lone snail in the middle of Alaska trying to find a few other snails located hundreds of miles away on the coast. Number 8. What does the snail in Alaska analogy represent? The answer is it represents the staggering distances in space and how incredibly difficult and slow it is to find a specific needle in a haystack across such a vast area. Number 9. What active methods did scientists use during the 1960s and 1970s to search for extraterrestrial life? The answer is they send out active signals, probes with messages, photos, music on rudimentary discs, and even maps showing how to find Earth. Number 10. Why did some people think that sending signals into space could be dangerous? The answer is they feared that the extraterrestrial beings who might find the signals might not be friendly. Next, number 11. Why has SETI adopted a more passive strategy in recent years? The answer is because it is more logically practical to wait and listen for signals rather than trying to guess where to send them. Number 12. According to Hillary, why is listening for signals more practical than sending them? Answer is because instead of trying to guess where others are like the snail traveling, we can sit back and wait for an advanced civilization's signals to reach us. Number 13, what kinds of civilization are SETI researchers hoping to find? My answer is advanced civilization capable of long distance in interstellar communication and possibly travel rather than just simple organism like fungus. Number 14, how have humans already made their presence known to possible extraterrestrial civilizations? My answer is by emanating radio and TV waves into space for about 70 years. Number 15, what is the meaning of the Paras tell signs in the context of the interview? My answer is it refers to specific recognizable signals or evidence like radio waves that clearly indicate the presence of intelligent civilization. Number 16, why does the silence from space worry some SETI scientists? My answer is because if life is as common as they believe, the total silence makes them worry that humans might actually be alone. Number 17, mention two possible explanations Hillary gives for why humans have not detected extraterrestrial civilizations yet. Number 1, we might be looking in the wrong place. Number 2, we might not have the right technology yet to pick up their advanced broadcast. Number 18, what does Hillary suggest about the possible lifespan of advanced civilizations? My answer is she suggests their lifespan might be short because they might become so technologically advanced that they destroy themselves through things like nuclear proliferation or environmental damage. Number 19. Why does Hillary remain optimistic about the existence of intelligent life in the universe? The answer is because the universe is staggeringly large, with as many galaxies as there are grains of sand on Earth, and we have only scanned a tiny portion of it. And the last, if Hillary had the chance to meet to extraterrestrial beings, what important question would she ask them and why? So my answer is she would ask how they survive the state of being capable of self-destruction, environmental, nuclear, population issues, because it is something humans are currently struggling with. Part 2. What right, true or false for each statement? If your answer is false, you must reword the statement correctly based on the text. Your correction must match the information stated in the interview. So number 1, SETI scientists mainly spend their time searching for UFOs flying around Earth. My answer is it is false. SETI scientists spend their time searching for signals from intelligent life in the universe, not UFOs around Earth. Number 2, Professor Hillary strongly believes that aliens frequently visit Earth in silver discs. It's false because Professor Hillary does not believe in UFOs or that aliens visit Earth in silver discs. Number 3, according to Hillary, all SETI scientists believe extraterrestrials have already landed on Earth. It false because according to Hillary, not all SETI scientists believe extraterrestrials have placed a foot on our planet. Number 4, Mike explains that SETI researchers regularly communicate with aliens using advanced telephones. It false. Mike mentions that communicating is not as simple as picking up a phone due to the staggering distances involved. Number 5. The snail in Alaska analogy was used to show how easy it is to find extraterrestrial life. It false. The snail in Alaska analogy was used to show how difficult it is to find extraterrestrial life. Number 6. During the 1960s and 1970s, SETI researchers only listened quietly for signals from space. It was because during the 1960s and 1970s, SETI researchers took an active stance by sending signals and probes into space. Number 7, scientists never sent any object, music, or photos into space during earlier SETI programs. It falls because scientists sent probes containing music, photos, and messages on rudimentary disks during earlier programs. Number 8, Hillary says that modern SETI strategies focus mainly on sending stronger radio signals into space. It falls because modern SETI strategies focus on a passive policy of waiting and listening for signals. Number 9, SETI researchers are mostly interested in discovering simple organisms such as fungus rather than intelligent civilizations. It falls because SETI researchers are ultimately interested in finding intelligent civilization capable of communication, not just simple fungus. Number 10. According to the interview, humans have only been sending radio and television waves into space for about 7 years. It falls because humans have been sending radio and television waves into space for about 70 years. Next, number 11. Hillary believes that every advanced civilization in the universe still exists today. It falls because Hillary suggests that some civilizations may have destroyed themselves and might no longer exist. Number 12. Hillary argues that environmental destruction and overpopulation are impossible problems for advanced civilizations. It falls because Hillary argues that these are real possibilities that could lead an advanced civilization to destroy itself. Number 13, Mike believes that the universe contains fewer galaxies than grains of sand on Earth. It falls. Mike does not state this. Hillary says there are as many galaxies as there are grains of sand on Earth to show how large the universe is. Number 14, Hillary says that humans have already completely explored the universe and most nearby galaxies. It falls because Hillary says we have only scanned our own galaxy and have a lot of real estate left to go through. Number 15. At the end of the interview, Hillary says that if extraterrestrials contact her, Mike will never hear about it. It falls because at the end of the interview, Hillary tells Mike that he will be the first to know if E.T. phones her. Part 3. Answer the question correctly. Number 1. Why did the Maisi family have plenty of food inside the house? My answer is the human family who live there like to eat well and keep a large stock of cheese, ham, crackers, bread, and cakes. Additionally, the humans were lazy and didn't sweep up crumbs until the morning, leaving plenty for the Maisi. Number 2, describe the cat that lived with the human family. So my answer is he was a young red dog cat with sky blue eyes and dark markings on his nose and paws. To humans, he was friendly, cuddly, and cute. Number 3, why did the Maisi consider the cat dangerous? It is because he had sharp claws and teeth, and he liked to stalk and pounce on the Maisi as if they were toys. The Maisi family was getting smaller because he was catching them. Number 4, where did the Maisi hold their family meeting? They held the meeting under the floorboards of the human's boy's bedroom. Number 5, why did the boy not tell his father about the Maisi? The boy secretly liked the Maisi and thought they were cute. He didn't want his father to put down mouse traps. Number 6, what problem did great-grandpa Mouse discuss during the meeting? Answer is he discussed the existential crisis caused by the cat, which as a threat to their survival, and asked for a plan to solve the problem. Number 7, what solution did Jimmy suggest to solve the problem? Jimmy suggested tying a bell to the cat's tail so that whenever the cat approached it, the Maisi would hear the ting-a-ling and have time to hide. Number 8, why did Jimmy not want to tie the bell to the cat himself? My answer is he didn't actually intend to volunteer. He knew it was incredibly dangerous and likely a suicide mission to get that close to the cat. Number 9, how did Jimmy finally manage to place the bell on the cat? My answer is he found a wooden toy fire struck with the bell on it. He took the string in his mouth, crept up to the sleeping cat, and looped the string over the tip of the cat's tail. Number 10, what was the final decision made by the surviving Maisi at the end of the story? My answer is the story ends as Jimmy places the bell. However, in the classic fable, decision is that it is one thing to suggest a plan, but another to carry it out. Once the bell was on, the Maisi decided to use the sound to stay safe. Number 11, why did the little kid go out think he was able to take care of himself? My answer is he felt he was growing up because his horns were starting to sprout, making him feel big and independent. Number 12, why did the kid ignore his mother's call? My answer is he was busy enjoying the delicious tender grass and was so full of his own importance that he thought he knew better than his mother. Number 13, what happened after the kid realized the flock had gone? My answer is he found himself completely alone in the field as the sun began to set and the shadows grew long. Number 14, describe the atmosphere when the kid was left alone in the field. It was getting dark, the sun was sinking below the horizon and cold. Long shadows were creeping across the grass. It was quiet and scary. Number 15. Where did the kid finally encounter the wolf? Answer is he encountered the wolf at the edge of the field near a dark clump of trees as he was trying to find his way home. Number 16. Why did the kid ask the wolf to play music before eating him? Number my answer is it was a clever trick to stall for time and hope that someone would hear the noise and come to save him. Number 17. Why did the wolf agree to play a tune for the kid? My answer is the wolf was feeling overconfident and liked the idea of a musical snack, thinking it would be fun to have a little tune before his meal. Number 18. How did the shepherd dogs know the wolf was nearby? So my answer is they heard the sound of the wolf blowing on the kid's pipe flute, which adds an unusual sound to hear in the fields at dusk. Number 19. What happened when the shepherd dogs heard the wolf's music? My answer is they immediately ran toward the sound, surprised the wolf, and chased him away before he could eat the kid. Number 20. Why did the wolf call himself a fool at the end of the story? My answer is he realized he should have stuck to being a butcher hunter instead of trying to be a musician. He lost his meal because he got distracted by vanity. Part 4. Make a note for A. The cat that went tingling. So the main topic, the struggle of a mouse community to survive against a predatory cat and the challenge of executing a dangerous plan. Detailed information: a large house well stocked with food due to a wealthy but lazy human family, and a young ragdoll cat that appears cute to humans but is a deadly hunter to mice. And then the mice population is shrinking, leading great grandpa mouse to call an existential crisis meeting under the floorboards. And a young mouse named Jimmy suggers bailing the cat, trying a bell to its tail so they can hear it coming. And Jimmy is pressured into the task. He uses a string from a wooden toy fire truck and successfully loops it onto the sleeping cat's tail. So conclusion: while a clever idea can provide a solution, the true difficulty lies in the courage required to put that idea into action. Jimmy's success saved the community, proving that even a small individual can make a big difference through action. Next, make a note for B. Wolf and the Kid. So the main topic is the consequences of youthful stubbornness and the triumph of wit over brute force. So detailed information is a young kid goat who, fooled by the sight of his growing horns, mistakenly believes he no longer needs the protection of the flock, and driven by vanity, he ignores his mother's call and stays in the pasture alone as night falls. And a wolf corners the kid, recognizing he cannot escape by running. The kid uses a final request to stall for time, and he flatters the wolf by asking him to play a tune on his pipe, claiming he wants to dance before he dies. And next, the loud music alerts the shepherd dogs, They arrive just in time to chase the wolf away, leaving the wolf to regret his own lack of focus. So the conclusion is the story concludes that while disobedience leads to danger, presence of mind provides a way out. The kid survives being smarter than his predator, while the wolf loses his meal because he abandoned his natural role to play the musician. So that is enough today for me. Thank you for watching and God bless you all. Thank you.